She was the kind of girl who always tried to blend in, but somehow, she never quite did. She had a quiet way about her, always watching and listening, but the moment she tried to speak up or show her talents, the world seemed to notice only her mistakes. Her classmates laughed at the smallest things she did wrong, and sometimes even her teachers seemed to sigh when she stumbled. But beneath all of that, she carried a deep love for performing, a love that made her heart race every time she imagined herself on a stage, in front of people who could really see her. From a very young age, she loved music. She would hum tunes while walking down the street or tap rhythms on the table during breakfast. But unlike other children who received praise or encouragement, she often faced teasing. Her voice was soft and sometimes cracked when she sang, and the way she moved seemed awkward to others. Kids at school were quick to point it out. "Why do you sing like that?" they would whisper, giggling behind their hands. "You sound silly." And when she tried to laugh it off, they laughed louder. Teachers would sometimes nod politely, but their words of encouragement never seemed to reach her. Even at home, life wasn't always easy. Her family loved her, but they didn't quite understand the world she lived in when she sang or danced. They would smile when she performed in the living room, but often it was half-hearted, and she could sense the worry in their eyes. They feared the same thing she did, that the world outside would be too cruel, that people would only see her failures and never her heart. So she grew accustomed to keeping her passion hidden, practicing alone in her room with the door closed and the curtains drawn. It became her secret world, a place where she could sing without judgment, move without embarrassment, and dream without limits. School was a different story. Every day felt like walking into a storm, uncertain of where the thunder would strike. At lunch, she would sit alone, careful to avoid the teasing. During class, she tried to participate quietly, never drawing attention to herself. But somehow, attention always found her. A wrong note on the piano during music class, a stumble in the hallway, a misplaced line in a school play, each one became fuel for others' laughter. It wasn't just the children. Sometimes even the older students would join in, laughing at the girl who dared to dream too loudly. Despite all of this, she didn't stop. When the world laughed, she found a way to keep moving, even if it was only in small, private ways. She would hum in the bathroom at home, tap rhythms with her fingers on the kitchen table, or sing softly to herself as she walked to school. Each of these moments was a tiny victory, a rebellion against the idea that she should shrink herself to avoid ridicule. Her love for performing was a flame she refused to let go out, even when everything around her seemed designed to douse it. Her classmates, though relentless, didn't understand the depth of her courage. They saw only the awkward moments and the mistakes, never the determination behind them. They didn't see how she would stay up late at night, practicing scales until her fingers ached, or how she would listen to recordings over and over, trying to capture the emotion she felt inside. They didn't see the tears she sometimes shed in the quiet of her room, tears that were a mixture of frustration, loneliness, and hope. They only saw what was easy to mock, and in that, they never realized the strength it took for her to simply continue. There were fleeting moments of encouragement, though, that kept her going. A nod from a music teacher when she hit the right note, a kind word from a friend who truly believed in her talent, or even a smile from someone who saw the effort behind her shaky performance. These small affirmations were like seeds planted in dry soil, slowly growing roots that would one day allow her to bloom. Each tiny moment reminded her that not everyone laughed, that not all eyes were judgmental, and that her passion was worth nurturing. Despite the ridicule, she remained kind. She never mocked others, never sought revenge or attention through cruelty. Her heart was too big for that, too full of love for the world she imagined on stage. She watched others perform, applauding genuinely, learning from them, and storing every note, every move, every expression for herself. She learned to see beauty even in failure, to understand that mistakes were not the end but rather steps on the path she was destined to walk. Every evening, when the house was quiet and the lights dimmed, she would practice in secret. Her voice, soft and hesitant at first, would grow stronger as she allowed herself to forget the world outside. Her movements, once clumsy, became fluid and expressive. She imagined herself on a stage, in front of an audience that truly listened, and she felt the thrill of connection, the joy of expression. In those moments, she was free, unburdened by laughter or doubt. But the world outside never gave her peace for long. School continued, each day bringing new challenges, new jeers, new whispers. She learned to brace herself for the laughter, to swallow the hurt, and to keep her secret passion alive. She became resilient in ways no one could see, strong in ways that were invisible. Her mockery became a mirror, reflecting her fears and insecurities, yet also showing her where she needed to grow. And deep down, she knew something that even the harshest critics could not take away. The spark of true passion, the love for performing, and the desire to connect with others through her art. It was a flame that refused to die, flickering in the face of ridicule, growing stronger in the quiet moments when she was alone with her music. She carried it like a secret treasure, hidden from the world, yet precious beyond measure. It was in these private moments that she made a promise to herself. One day, she would stand in front of people not to be mocked, but to be seen. One day, her performance would not bring laughter, but emotion. One day, she would show the world the depth of her heart and the strength of her spirit. She didn't know when or how it would happen, but she held on to that hope with every note she sang, every movement she practiced, and every dream she dared to imagine. And so life continued. The laughter of others, the whispers, the stares. None of it could extinguish the quiet determination growing inside her. She walked the halls with her head held just a little higher, sang in the shadows, and dreamed in the silence. She was mocked, yes, but she was also quietly building the foundation for something greater, something that would one day surprise everyone, including herself. Her journey was just beginning, and though the world saw her as a mockery, she was learning to see herself as something much more. A girl with a dream, a heart full of courage, and a spirit that would not be defeated. And though the laughter continued, each day she grew a little stronger, a little braver, and a little closer to the moment when the world would finally see her for who she truly was. The day of the big announcement came quietly, almost without warning. The school principal stood at the front of the assembly hall, holding a piece of paper that seemed heavier than it actually was. He spoke about the upcoming talent show, describing it as the chance for students to share their skills, to shine, and to show the school what they could do. The words floated through the hall, but to her, they felt like thunderclaps. A talent show was the opportunity she had always dreamed of, yet it was also the moment she had feared the most. The thought of standing in front of a crowd, with everyone watching, made her stomach twist into knots. Her classmates buzzed with excitement, whispering about what they would perform, who would win, and who would probably make fools of themselves. And then there was her, sitting quietly at the edge of her seat, her mind racing. She wanted to raise her hand and volunteer, to take that chance, but the memory of past ridicule held her back. She remembered the snickers when she tried to sing in music class, the laughter at a poorly executed dance step during the last school event. The thought of that happening in front of the entire school made her want to disappear. Yet, as she sat there, a small voice inside her whispered that this was different. This was her chance, perhaps the only chance to show the world the passion she had carried in secret for so long. She looked around the hall, seeing her friends and classmates chatting and laughing, unaware of the turmoil inside her. Her eyes fell on the music room across the hall. She remembered all the evenings she had spent there, practicing alone, letting her voice rise and fall, letting her movements flow with the music, without fear. That memory gave her a glimmer of courage. After a long, quiet night of thinking, she made her decision. She would perform. She didn't know if she could handle the laughter, if she could survive the embarrassment, but she knew she had to try. She signed up quietly, her name written on the list in small, careful letters. Once it was done, a wave of both relief and terror washed over her. She had committed and there was no going back. At home, the news of her participation spread quickly. Her family was both proud and concerned. They reminded her gently of the potential for ridicule, cautioning her to be realistic. But they also encouraged her to do her best, to embrace the experience, and to find joy in performing. Their words were soft, but they carried weight. She spent that night alone in her room, rehearsing the opening lines of her song, feeling her voice crack, then finding the courage to continue. She remembered all the hours she had practiced in secret, the countless times she had imagined this moment, and she told herself she would not let fear win. The next few days were filled with preparation. She avoided the cafeteria as much as possible, practicing her notes quietly in the music room or under the stairs where no one could see her. She struggled with self-doubt constantly, imagining the laughter, the whispers, the eyes that would judge her every move. But she also experienced moments of clarity, moments when the music flowed through her effortlessly, when she felt the joy and freedom that had first drawn her to performing. These moments reminded her why she persisted, why she kept her dream alive despite the cruelty of others. Her friends noticed a change in her demeanor. She walked with a little more confidence, spoke with a quieter certainty, and smiled more often, even if only to herself. Some asked her if she was nervous, and she would simply nod, giving a small, secretive smile that only hinted at the storm of emotions inside her. She didn't confide in anyone fully. Her journey was hers alone. She was determined to face this challenge by herself, to prove to herself that she could rise above the mockery that had defined her life. During practice, she made mistakes, many mistakes. She forgot lyrics, missed steps in her choreography, and stumbled over notes that had once felt easy. Each error made her heart race, made her cheeks burn, and made her doubt her decision. But with each mistake, she learned. She corrected, adapted, and practiced again. Slowly, the shaky beginnings turned into smoother transitions, the faltering notes became confident phrases, and her movements, once awkward, began to tell a story. She started to believe that maybe, just maybe, she could do this. There were moments of near despair. One afternoon, after an exhausting rehearsal, she collapsed on the floor of the music room, tears streaming down her face. The fear of being laughed at, the weight of past mockery, and the pressure she placed on herself all collided at once. She felt utterly defeated. But then she remembered why she loved performing. She remembered the private concerts in her bedroom, the way music made her feel alive, the connection she longed to share with others. Slowly, she wiped her tears, stood up, and returned to practice. Every note, every movement, every emotion became her defiance against fear. In the days leading up to the talent show, she faced the hardest challenge, confronting her own self-doubt. She looked in the mirror, rehearsing her expression, her posture, her gestures. She imagined the audience staring, waiting, judging, and she imagined herself standing tall, singing with her heart open, moving with all the courage she could summon. She repeated the scene over and over, each time convincing herself a little more that she could survive, that she could shine. Her mentor, a retired musician who had noticed her dedication, offered guidance during this time. They taught her how to control her breathing, how to convey emotion, and how to let go of the fear that had always held her back. With every lesson, she felt her confidence grow, and the quiet voice inside her became louder, telling her that she was ready. Not perfect, but ready. The laughter of the past had no power here. She had the tools, the practice, and the courage to face the moment. The night before the talent show, she barely slept. Her mind raced with images of the stage, the audience, and the performance she had rehearsed countless times. Yet, despite the nerves, she felt a quiet excitement building inside her. This was the moment she had prepared for, the moment that could change everything. She clutched her notebook, filled with notes, lyrics, and reminders, and whispered to herself that no matter what happened, she had already won by daring to try. On the morning of the show, she went through her routine with meticulous care. She practiced her song one last time, rehearsed her entrance, and reminded herself to breathe. Every step, every note, every gesture was intentional, a statement that she was more than the ridicule that had haunted her for years. She left her room with a mixture of fear and determination, knowing that the world would soon see her, and that she would no longer remain hidden in the shadows. When she arrived at the venue, the atmosphere was electric with excitement. Students were chatting, parents were taking seats, and the organizers were making final adjustments. She slipped into the wings, unseen by most, and took a moment to center herself. She closed her eyes and remembered the countless evenings she had spent practicing alone. The tears, the laughter, the quiet victories. She reminded herself that every small step had led to this moment. She was not just performing for the audience. She was performing for herself, proving that she could rise above the mockery and fear. As the first performers took the stage, she observed quietly. She cheered politely, feeling a mixture of nerves and inspiration. Each performance reminded her that everyone struggles, that everyone has doubts, and that courage was not the absence of fear, but the decision to act despite it. She adjusted her posture, took a deep breath, and waited for her turn, knowing that soon, she would step into the light and show everyone the girl who had been mocked for so long. The day of the talent show had finally arrived, and the building buzzed with energy. Students, parents, and teachers filled the seats, laughter and chatter blending with the nervous whispers of performers backstage. She sat quietly in the wings, heart pounding like a drum, trying to calm the storm of fear and excitement inside her. The bright stage lights seemed to pierce her very soul, making the hairs on her arms stand on end. Every sound, every movement, seemed amplified, and her mind raced with questions. What if she messed up? What if the audience laughed? What if all her hard work was wasted? Her name had been called earlier than she expected. She clutched the edge of the curtain, took a deep breath, and stepped forward. The moment her foot touched the stage floor, a hush fell over the room. Hundreds of eyes were on her, and for a split second, she felt frozen. But then, she remembered all the nights she had spent practicing alone, the hours of struggle, the tears and the determination. She remembered the voice of her mentor telling her that courage was acting despite fear. She closed her eyes for a moment, drew in a deep breath, and let the music flow through her. The first few notes were shaky, her voice trembling slightly. She felt the familiar pang of doubt, the instinct to retreat, but she forced herself to continue. Slowly, the notes grew steadier, confidence building with each phrase. She remembered the stories she wanted to tell, the emotions she wanted to share, and she poured them into her voice. Her body moved with the rhythm, hands expressive, steps deliberate, every motion conveying a part of herself that had long been hidden. As she performed, she noticed subtle changes in the audience. Some faces that had been skeptical or distracted turned toward her, listening more intently. Whispers of surprise floated through the room. She saw a few students who had mocked her in the past sit quietly, eyes wide, expressions unreadable. The laughter she had feared was absent. Instead, there was a growing sense of attention, of connection. Each note she sang, each movement she made, seemed to reach people in ways she had only dreamed of. Her nerves began to transform into exhilaration. She had expected fear to dominate, but instead, a strange joy filled her. She realized that performing was not about perfection. It was about honesty. It was about letting others see who she truly was, without shame or apology. She felt free in a way she never had before, liberated from the weight of ridicule. Every mistake she had made in practice had prepared her for this moment. Every tear she had shed had strengthened her resolve. And now, every word, every note, every gesture was a testament to her courage. The song reached its climax, and she felt a wave of emotion swell inside her. Her voice rose, strong and clear, filled with the intensity of her passion and vulnerability. She sang not just with her mouth, but with her heart, her soul, every part of her being. For a moment, time seemed to stop. The audience leaned in, silent, captivated, moved by something they had never expected. The girl who had been mocked for so long was no longer invisible. She was alive, radiant, and real, connecting with everyone in the room. As the final note lingered in the air, the room erupted in applause. Some clapped hesitantly at first, unsure, then louder and louder as the impact of her performance sank in. There were cheers, whistles, and tears, and she felt them all wash over her like a warm, unexpected tide. Her heart raced, tears streaming down her cheeks, but this time they were tears of joy, of triumph, of relief. She had done it. She had faced her fear and turned it into something beautiful. Backstage, she was overwhelmed with emotion. Her legs shook, her hands trembled, but she smiled, a smile so wide and genuine that it seemed to light up the room. Fellow performers came up to her, some offering congratulations, others in awe of what they had just witnessed. She could hardly speak, her throat tight with emotion, but she managed to nod, to smile, to accept the recognition she had longed for. Her classmates who had mocked her were quiet at first, unsure of how to respond. Then, slowly, some approached her, offering hesitant words of admiration. A few simply stared, stunned, unable to hide their surprise. The girl who had once been the target of laughter was now the center of respect, if only for a moment, and it felt surreal. She realized that the ridicule she had endured had not broken her. It had prepared her for this victory. It had made her stronger, more resilient, more determined. Later, as she walked home, the adrenaline began to fade, leaving a gentle, profound calm. She thought about the journey that had brought her here. The lonely practices, the harsh laughter, the quiet moments of self-doubt, and the relentless hope that had never abandoned her. She understood now that the performance was not just about the applause or the recognition. It was about the transformation within herself. She had faced her fear, embraced her passion, and allowed herself to shine. Over the next few days, the aftermath of the performance unfolded in surprising ways. Teachers praised her dedication, classmates who had doubted her offered compliments, and even strangers mentioned how moved they had been by her presence on stage. She found herself walking taller, speaking with more confidence, and feeling a sense of belonging she had never experienced before. The laughter that had once haunted her seemed distant now, replaced by a quiet pride and a new understanding of her own strength. The experience also sparked new ambitions. She began to dream bigger, to imagine herself performing in larger venues, sharing her voice and story with more people, inspiring those who felt marginalized or mocked. She understood that her journey was just beginning, and that the courage she had discovered could carry her further than she had ever imagined. Every note she had sung, every step she had taken on that stage, became a foundation for the dreams she would pursue in the future. At home, she shared the experience with her family, recounting the applause, the reactions, and the emotions that had swept over her. They listened with pride, seeing the transformation that had taken place, and offered encouragement for the future. She felt the support she had longed for, the kind that acknowledged not just talent, but heart, perseverance, and resilience. It was a validation not of perfection, but of courage and authenticity. In the weeks that followed, she noticed subtle changes in her interactions at school. Some of the students who had teased her began to treat her differently, with more respect and curiosity rather than ridicule. She noticed new friendships forming, conversations sparked by shared interests and admiration for her courage. The sense of isolation that had defined much of her life began to fade, replaced by connections that were deeper, more genuine, and built on mutual respect. Yet she remained humble, aware that the journey was ongoing. She continued to practice, to improve, and to face challenges with the same quiet determination that had brought her to the stage. She understood that true courage was not a single act, but a continuous effort to show up, to persist, and to express herself fully, even when the world was uncertain or critical. Each day became a new opportunity to grow, to learn, and to inspire herself and others. She also discovered the power of storytelling through performance. She realized that her music, her movements, and her expression had the ability to evoke emotion, to connect people, and to communicate truths that words alone could not convey. This understanding deepened her commitment to her craft, reinforcing the idea that performing was not just about personal fulfillment, but also about touching the hearts of others. It became a responsibility she embraced with care and passion. Through it all, she never forgot the nights of private practice, the tears shed in solitude, and the moments of fear that had once seemed insurmountable. They were not regrets, but lessons, reminders of how far she had come and of the resilience that had carried her through. She carried them with pride, a testament to the girl who refused to let mockery define her, who found strength in vulnerability, and who dared to dream despite fear. And so, the girl who had once been laughed at continued her journey, transformed by the performance that had changed everything. She had faced her fears, embraced her passion, and experienced the profound impact of courage. The applause, the tears of the audience, and the newfound respect were not the end, but a milestone on a path of growth, creativity, and self-discovery. She understood now that her story was far from over, and that the greatest performances were still ahead, waiting to be shared with a world that would finally see her for who she truly was. When the day of the talent show arrived, the hall was packed, the air buzzing with anticipation and nervous energy. Students shuffled in their seats, parents whispered to one another, and teachers checked the program one last time. Backstage, performers paced or fidgeted, rehearsing silently or whispering encouragement to friends. She sat quietly, her hands clasped tightly in her lap, her stomach fluttering with a mix of fear and excitement. The bright stage lights reflected in her eyes, blinding and warm, and for a moment, she imagined herself shrinking, wanting to disappear into the shadows. But she remembered the long nights of practice, the tears, the whispered songs to herself when no one watched, and she straightened her back. When her name was called, she felt a jolt of panic, followed by a deep inhale that tried to calm her racing heart. She stepped onto the stage, each footstep echoing like a drumbeat in her chest. The audience fell silent, hundreds of eyes turning toward her, some curious, some skeptical. She paused for a heartbeat, allowing herself to feel the weight of their gaze, and then began. The first notes were tentative, fragile, trembling through the microphone. She felt the familiar knot of fear, the instinct to retreat, but she pressed forward, letting her voice rise. As the song progressed, something remarkable happened. The music she had practiced so many times alone became a bridge to the audience. Her trembling notes settled into confidence. Her movements, once stiff, began to flow naturally. Every chord, every phrase, carried the emotion she had felt for years but never dared to show. She poured herself into the performance, not thinking about who might judge, who might laugh, or who might whisper. All that existed in that moment was the music, her heart, and the story she wanted to tell. At first, the audience reacted quietly. Some leaned forward, eyebrows raised in surprise. The whispers faded, replaced by a collective stillness, as everyone absorbed the authenticity and emotion she radiated. She could feel the energy of the room changing, a subtle shift as attention replaced skepticism. The people who had once mocked her looked stunned, their laughter caught in their throats. The girl who had been overlooked and ridiculed was commanding the room, not with arrogance, but with raw honesty. By the middle of the performance, her nerves had transformed into exhilaration. The stage became a sanctuary, a place where she could express every part of herself. Her voice soared, each note carrying the weight of her journey, her struggles, and her relentless hope. The audience was captivated, drawn into the story she was telling through sound and movement. Even those who had never considered her talent now watched in awe, their expressions softening, eyes widening, and hands gripping the edges of their seats in anticipation. Every movement was deliberate, expressive, and heartfelt. She had spent hours perfecting not just the song but the way she conveyed emotion physically. Her hands, her posture, her facial expressions, all worked together to create a performance that was not merely seen and heard, but felt. The hall seemed to hold its breath, the silence punctuated only by the music and the occasional gasp of amazement. She felt a profound connection with the audience, a shared understanding of vulnerability, courage, and beauty. The climax of the performance was a crescendo of emotion. Her voice hit the highest notes she had dared to attempt, strong and unwavering. She closed her eyes, letting the music take over, letting the emotion carry her. Every fear, every tear, every lonely night of practice poured out in that moment. The audience responded instinctively, leaning in, some with tears glistening in their eyes. The girl who had once been mocked was now creating a space where emotion was shared, where hearts connected across age, experience, and expectation. As the final note faded, there was a heartbeat of silence, as if the room collectively exhaled in awe. And then, the applause erupted. It began as tentative claps, then grew into cheers, whistles, and stomping feet. The sound washed over her, a wave of affirmation, relief, and joy. Tears streamed down her face, but this time they were not of frustration or fear. They were tears of triumph, of release, and of pure, unfiltered happiness. She had done it. She had taken the mockery, the doubt, and the fear, and turned them into something beautiful. Backstage, fellow performers and friends rushed to her side, offering hugs, congratulations, and words of awe. Her hands shook, and her knees felt weak, but she smiled through the tears, overwhelmed by the realization that she had truly transformed the energy in the room. Even some of the students who had mocked her in the past approached quietly, unsure how to express themselves but clearly moved. For the first time, she felt seen, not for a mistake or a joke, but for who she was, for the courage and heart she had poured into her performance. As the night continued, the sense of triumph lingered. Her family embraced her, pride shining in their eyes. Teachers offered praise, not just for the performance itself, but for the bravery and perseverance it represented. She realized that the journey to this moment had been just as important as the applause, that every tear, every late night of practice, every whispered self-encouragement had built the foundation for this triumph. She understood now that true victory was not measured by recognition alone, but by the courage to face fear and express oneself fully. In the following days, the impact of her performance extended beyond applause and congratulations. Conversations at school shifted. Students who had been skeptical began to see her differently, curious about her determination and talent. Some who had previously mocked her expressed admiration, others offered apologies for their past behavior. She noticed a subtle but profound change in the way people interacted with her, a shift from ridicule to respect. And yet, she remained humble, aware that the experience was not the end but a milestone in a continuing journey. She also discovered a new sense of self-awareness and confidence. The courage she had summoned on stage carried into other aspects of her life. She participated more openly in class, shared her ideas without fear of judgment, and began to explore opportunities that had once seemed impossible. Each success, no matter how small, reinforced the lesson she had learned, that vulnerability and honesty were sources of strength, and that the act of daring to be herself was transformative. Her mentor noticed the change as well. They spoke of the performance as a turning point not just in skill, but in the development of character. The lessons of practice, perseverance, and courage had coalesced into an experience that would shape her approach to challenges for years to come. She took these lessons to heart, embracing the idea that obstacles and criticism were not barriers but opportunities to grow and prove resilience. The girl who had once feared the world's judgment now carried a quiet pride. She walked differently, spoke differently, and interacted differently. Yet, she never forgot the fear that had preceded triumph, the loneliness that had made victory sweeter, and the ridicule that had sharpened her resolve. She carried these memories with grace, understanding that they were part of the journey that had brought her to this extraordinary moment of connection and achievement. Looking ahead, she felt inspired to pursue her passion more deeply. The performance had shown her that her voice, her expression, and her heart could resonate with others. It had demonstrated the power of courage, authenticity, and perseverance. She began to dream of larger stages, more audiences, and opportunities to touch lives through her art. The experience had ignited a flame of possibility that would guide her path forward, transforming the girl who had once been mocked into someone who inspired admiration, emotion, and hope. And so, as the lights dimmed and the echoes of applause faded into memory, she understood the profound truth of her journey. The performance was not just an event. It was a revelation. It was the moment she transformed fear into strength, ridicule into respect, and isolation into connection. The girl who had once been laughed at had stepped into the light, not just to perform, but to claim her voice, her place, and her story. It was a moment that would remain with her forever, a turning point that proved that courage, heart, and authenticity could overcome even the harshest mockery. The applause had died down, but the feeling in the room lingered, a warm, electric hum that seemed to wrap around her like a comforting embrace. She stepped off the stage slowly, still trembling with adrenaline and emotion. Every step she took felt surreal, as if she were walking through a dream she had long imagined but never thought she would reach. Backstage, friends and fellow performers crowded around her, their faces filled with admiration, awe, and unspoken respect. The girl who had once been the target of laughter was now the heart of the story, the embodiment of courage, resilience, and hope. Her family embraced her tightly, their pride evident in every hug and whispered word. Tears streamed down their faces as they praised not just the performance, but the journey that had led her here. They had watched her struggle, doubt herself, and persevere, and now they could witness the reward of all that effort. Their support, which had always been quiet but unwavering, felt brighter, louder, and more real in this moment. She realized that they had always believed in her, even when she had struggled to believe in herself. Throughout the night, the reactions continued. Teachers, classmates, and audience members who had once doubted or laughed now approached her, some hesitantly, others eagerly, expressing admiration and respect. She received compliments not just on her voice or her movements, but on the emotion she had conveyed, the honesty she had shared, and the courage she had shown. Each word, each smile, each nod of approval reinforced the realization that her efforts had made a difference, not only for herself but for those who had witnessed her transformation. As the evening progressed, she found herself reflecting on the journey that had brought her here. She remembered the nights spent practicing in secret, the tears shed in solitude, the ridicule she had endured, and the small victories that had kept her going. She understood now that those experiences had not been obstacles but lessons, shaping her into someone capable of facing fear and expressing herself fully. The mockery that had once defined her existence had become a backdrop for growth, resilience, and ultimate triumph. She noticed subtle changes in her school life after the performance. Peers who had once mocked her approached her differently, with curiosity and respect rather than ridicule. Conversations that had previously been uncomfortable or filled with laughter at her expense now carried genuine interest and engagement. She found herself forming connections that were deeper and more meaningful than before, built on admiration for her courage and authenticity. The experience had shifted not only her own perspective but also the way others perceived her, creating an environment where respect and acknowledgement replaced judgment. Her confidence began to extend beyond performing. She participated more actively in class, shared her ideas without hesitation, and embraced opportunities that she might have avoided in the past. The courage she had summoned on stage became a foundation for everyday life, reminding her that vulnerability and honesty were sources of strength. She discovered that the act of daring to be herself could inspire not only herself but also those around her. Each interaction, each decision, each step forward became an affirmation of the lessons she had learned. The journey also ignited a new sense of ambition and purpose. She began to dream bigger, imagining herself performing in larger venues, sharing her talents with wider audiences, and connecting with people through her art. The experience of the talent show had demonstrated the power of expression, the impact of courage, and the value of persistence. It had shown her that passion, when pursued with dedication and authenticity, could break barriers and touch hearts. She carried this realization forward, allowing it to guide her future endeavors. Mentors and teachers continued to encourage her growth. They emphasized the importance of practice, self-reflection, and emotional connection in performance. With their guidance, she honed her skills further, exploring new techniques, experimenting with expression, and deepening her understanding of the craft. Each lesson reinforced the connection between effort, perseverance, and meaningful impact, reminding her that talent alone was not enough without dedication and heart. Her family remained a source of unwavering support. They celebrated every milestone, encouraged her during moments of doubt, and provided a safe space for her to express herself fully. Their belief in her abilities, combined with her own growing self-confidence, created a foundation from which she could continue to pursue her dreams. The love and encouragement she received became a constant reminder that she was never alone in her journey, that the bonds of care and belief could fortify even the most fragile moments of doubt. Over time, she began to mentor others who faced similar challenges. She shared her story of mockery, struggle, and triumph, emphasizing the importance of persistence, self-belief, and authenticity. Her experiences became lessons for those who doubted themselves, showing that courage could overcome fear, that passion could transcend ridicule, and that perseverance could transform lives. By helping others find their voice, she reinforced her own growth, recognizing that her journey had ripple effects beyond her own life. She also discovered the importance of reflection and self-awareness. She continued to practice and perform, but she also took time to evaluate her experiences, understand her emotions, and learn from her mistakes. Each performance became not just an opportunity to showcase talent, but a chance to explore, grow, and connect. She learned to embrace imperfection as part of the human experience, understanding that authenticity and effort mattered far more than flawless execution. This perspective allowed her to perform with freedom and joy, deepening her connection with herself and her audience. As the months passed, the memory of ridicule became less a source of pain and more a testament to her resilience. She no longer feared judgment as intensely, having experienced firsthand the power of courage and authenticity. Each new challenge, whether in performance or life, became an opportunity to apply the lessons she had learned, to face fear with determination, and to express herself fully. She carried the knowledge that her journey was ongoing, that growth was continuous, and that each step forward was part of a larger story. The impact of her transformation extended beyond personal success. She inspired peers, friends, and family members to embrace their own passions and face their fears. Her story became a reminder that obstacles, ridicule, and self-doubt could be overcome with perseverance, courage, and dedication. She demonstrated that vulnerability was not weakness, but a powerful tool for connection, expression, and growth. Through her journey, she proved that the act of daring to be oneself could create meaningful change in both personal and communal spaces. In the quiet moments of reflection, she thought about the girl she had once been, the one who had feared laughter, criticism, and failure. She acknowledged the pain, the tears, and the struggles that had shaped her, recognizing them as essential parts of her story. But she also celebrated the courage, the persistence, and the love for performing that had carried her through. She understood that growth was not linear, that setbacks were part of the process, and that every moment of doubt could lead to triumph when met with determination. The girl who had once been a mockery had become a symbol of resilience and hope. Her performance had not only transformed how others saw her, but also how she saw herself. She had learned the value of persistence, the power of authenticity, and the beauty of courage. Her story became a source of inspiration, illustrating that even in the face of ridicule, fear, and doubt, one could rise, shine, and touch the hearts of others. She carried this truth with her into every new challenge, every new opportunity, and every step forward in life. In the years that followed, she continued to pursue her passion for performing, expanding her skills, exploring new avenues, and inspiring those around her. The memory of the talent show remained a cornerstone of her journey, a reminder of the moment when fear and ridicule were transformed into courage and triumph. She understood that the path of growth was ongoing, that each performance, each challenge, and each moment of vulnerability contributed to her evolution as an artist and as a person. Ultimately, the story of the girl who had once been mocked became a story of hope and empowerment. She had faced the laughter of others, embraced her passion, and discovered the strength within herself to rise above fear. She had transformed her vulnerability into power, her doubts into determination, and her private dreams into shared experiences that moved and inspired others. The girl who had once been unseen, ridiculed, and overlooked had become a beacon of courage, authenticity, and resilience, showing that the human spirit, when nurtured and brave, could overcome even the harshest challenges.